One day, a carpenter and a blacksmith started arguing. "I am a greater craftsman than you," said the carpenter. "How can you say that?" "I have more skills than you," the blacksmith immediately replied. Their debate went on without resolution. Finally, it was decided that the king should make the decision. The king saw them and asked, "Why have you come here?" "I am a carpenter," one replied. "And there is not a single craftsman in the whole world who can create unique things like I can. But this blacksmith claims that he is a greater craftsman than me. Whoever sees what I have made wakes up at night," the other said. "Yet this carpenter says that he is a greater craftsman than I am." After that, both pleaded simultaneously. "Your Majesty, we have come to your court for justice. Now decide for yourself who among us is the greatest craftsman." At this, the king fell into thought. "How can we decide? We have not seen your work. Go and bring your own masterpiece within 10 days. So both craftsmen took their leave and, 10 days later, they again appeared in the king's court. The blacksmith brought a very big fish with him. "What is its characteristic?" the king asked. "This fish of mine can lift thousands of grains and swim in the sea," the blacksmith claimed. The king could hardly contain his laughter. He thought the blacksmith would definitely lose. "Such a heavy iron fish, and you say it will float in the water." However, he ordered the servants to load 100,000 sacks full of grain. "Let's see if this fish swims or not," he declared. And to everyone's surprise, the fish started to swim very fast. The onlookers were stunned. The king praised the blacksmith immensely and said, "We also appoint you as an officer." And thus, he was made the numberdar of a village. The carpenter made a wooden horse and brought it. Seeing the horse, the king was extremely disappointed and said, "What have you brought?" "A toy for children. This can't compete with the fish." "Your Highness, it is much more than a fish," the carpenter replied. "Look at these 26 rings. Twist the first ring, and the horse will fly. Twist the second ring, and it will speed up. Similarly, twist the 26th ring, and it will start talking to the air." And while the carpenter was speaking, the youngest prince arrived, and after hearing the claim, his heart was awakened with a desire to fly in the sky and explore the world. He asked his father for permission to ride the horse. "Absolutely not," the king replied. "Can this horse truly fly? And even if it does, what if it falls to the ground?" "Your Majesty, do not worry. It will not fall," the carpenter assured him suddenly. The prince objected. He was his father's pride, and the king never ignored his wishes. Finally, the king had to yield to his son's insistence and said, "Very well, ride the horse, but fly slowly. And yes, do not twist any ring other than the first one." The prince promised. Mounting the horse, he twisted the first ring, and to everyone's amazement, the horse began to fly. The prince soared through the sky, gazing down at the mountains, rivers, trees, cities, and people below. As he ascended higher, everything started to appear smaller, filling his heart with a strange joy. He continued to twist the first ring, and the horse's speed increased. Soon, people, trees, and even cities started disappearing in the blink of an eye. After flying for a long time, the prince grew hungry. Suddenly, a city appeared below. When the prince turned the horse, its speed slowed down, and he dismounted with great ease. He went to an inn, ate his fill, and began to rest. He had never seen such a bustling city before and was overjoyed. "This city is the adventure of a lifetime," he thought. The next day, he went out for a walk in the city. While strolling, he noticed many people standing in the square, staring at the sky. There must be something special for these people to stand like this, he thought, and joined them, looking up. But he saw nothing. "What are you all looking at?" he asked a man standing nearby. The man replied, "The king of our country has only one daughter. She is so beautiful that no girl in the world can compete with her. The king loves her dearly and does not allow anyone to even gaze upon the princess. She used to live here in the palace, but the king could find no peace during the day. So he built a palace for the princess in the sky. Now the princess lives there, and the king visits her every day. At this moment, the king is returning, and all these people are waiting to see him. The prince found all this very strange and asked, "How can one build a palace in the sky?" When the prince heard a story that touched his heart deeply. That night, he rode his magical flying horse up to the sky. There he found a huge palace with a gate. He got off his horse and went inside. A princess inside the palace saw someone coming. She first thought it was her father, the king. But when she saw a stranger, she thought he must be the king. Because it was impossible for a normal person to come to this palace. So she stood up to welcome the prince. The prince saw the princess and fell in love at first sight. He thought, if I could marry such a beautiful woman, I would be the luckiest man. The princess also liked the prince. She wanted to leave the palace because she felt alone and trapped there. Later, the prince went back to his place, and the princess stayed in her palace. The next day, the prince flew back to his country. He told his father, the king, about his love for the princess. At first, the princess loved the palace because everything was new. But soon, she got bored. She was her parents' only child. One day, the princess met a prince. She was shocked because he was not her father, the king. "Who are you? Why are you here?" she asked. "I am a prince from a faraway land," he answered. "How did you get here?" she asked again. The prince had a horse with him that caught the princess's eye. He told her his story. The princess was surprised and happy to hear it. By hearing the story, she wanted to ride the horse, and the prince agreed. They flew on the horse around the sky palace. They saw fairies and flying horses. There were forests with waterfalls. It was like a dream. After their ride, the prince went to his place, and the princess went back to her palace. The next day, the prince flew back to his country. He told his father, the king, that he loved the princess. The king was happy when the prince came back. The prince was his favorite son. So he decided to meet the other king for proposal. At the same time, the king had to solve the problem between a carpenter and a blacksmith. They were both good at their jobs but did not get along. The king thought they could do great things together for the kingdom. So he made them work together. The king then went to the other country to ask the other king if the prince could marry the princess. He was surprised to see the other king's country, which was very advanced. The other king took care of his daughter very well. She lived in a palace above the clouds. The other king needed time to think. So, the first king went back home. The father king of prince was nervous. He wanted to make a good impression. He asked the carpenter and blacksmith to make something special. They made a flying carriage. It could carry heavy things, fly, and be used in wars. The father king of prince thought it was perfect for the princess on her wedding. And he gifted the carriage to the father king of the princess. Accepted and liked the carriage. And noticed that his daughter liked the prince. So he agreed to the marriage. The two kingdoms celebrated, and the prince and princess got married. The prince and princess lived a life filled with joy. The two countries shared ideas and helped each other grow. The carpenter and blacksmith, once rivals, now worked as a team. They made new things that could fly, like small cars and aeroplanes. This made it easier for people to move things and travel. Moral: unity is strength. When we collaborate and combine our efforts, we can overcome any obstacle and achieve the extraordinary. If you liked the story, do not forget to subscribe to our channel to get more interesting stories. And the channel needs your support.